Okay. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be working on analogies. An analogy is an inductive argument, and inductive arguments, as some of you know, is different than deductive argument. The inductive argument has their premise is lead to the conclusion in terms of probability. So if the premises are strong, the premises are true, then the conclusion in an inductive argument is likely to be true. Now this is different than a deductive argument, right? Because the deductive arguments, when their premises are true, the conclusion is always true. So here's an analogical argument. It says something is like something else. Cows are like goats. Cows have a set of attributes. They have hair-like structures, they nurse their young, they give live births, and they have a spinal cord. That's the nursing the young part. It's okay, you can leave it on there. The goats also have hair-like structures, nurse the young, give live births, and have spinal cords. Goats have an additional attribute, namely being a mammal. And since goats and cows share attributes 1 through 5, having a spinal cord, giving live births, having structures, nursing your young, and one is a mammal, then it's likely that the other one is too. The key thing to remember here is that what's doing the work is the attributes, these attributes right here related to each other. So the question then becomes, what does 1 through 5 have to do with 6? How is it related? Do the R for relation. How is having 1 through 5 related to having 6? And there's different ways to kind of figure that out, but that's the name of the game. We want to be able to tell it, have attributes that are clearly related to each other, such that having a certain set of them implies you, or makes it more likely that you will have this other attribute. And so what we want to focus on when it comes to have this premise right here at 1 through 5 and 6 is relevance. So relevance is really important. And relevance is like, what is it, how is having one set of attributes relevant to having another one? What is, say, having hair-like structures, giving live births, and nursing your young, what does that have to do with, say, being a mammal, right? Well, they're relevant, right? Those are relevant attributes. There's a lot of things that everything has in common that aren't relevant to other particular things, right? Like, there's a lot of things relevant, that are shared between me and this phone right here recording this lesson, but they're not relevant to, say, being conscious or having the ability to speak. So there's a lot of things that were related to, say, me and this board even, but I can move on my own and the board can't. So those attributes, clearly, some of those aren't relevant to that being able to move. We need to figure out what is related, what is relevant to what. And that's going to be the main part of the analogical argument. One way to determine some relevance when it comes to, say, this set right here and this set, is bringing back in our necessary and sufficient conditions. Imagine this. So, first of all, one thing I wanted to mention before we go into that is 1 through 5, and then what I want to tell you about is the relationship between having 1 through 5 and having 6, or having 6 and having 1 through 5. So we'll do this first, and we'll do this second. Here, when you're talking about having attributes 1 through 5, you need to list them, or you need to list attributes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the number of them isn't super important. Like, you don't have to have exactly 5. But say this attribute right here needs to be related to this attribute, and this one needs to be related to this one, this one, this one, this one. They need to be relevant to each other, like related to each other, because there has to be something about this set right here. Like what is it about this set that is relevant to, say, having 6? Well, there has to be something that either they do with each other, like maybe 1 and 2 work together to make 3 through 4, 3 through 5 rather, and 3 through 5 together cause 6 or something. It might be the case that there's something that they all share together, that when 5 of them have it, or a certain number of have it, or a certain organization of them have it, then you have 6. Right? So how are these attributes related to each other? What is having hair-like structures, nursing young, giving life birth, having a spinal cord? How are those particular attributes related to each other? And I'm not saying related to being a mammal. I'm saying how are those related to each other? Because there's going to be something structurally that's important about those attributes being related to each other, such that they're related to having this one over here, namely being a mammal. And so relevance, you need to think about this. Relevance. What does 1 through 5 have to do with 6? What does 1 through 5 have to do with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? What does this set of attributes have to do with having 1, with having 2, with having 3, having 4, having 5? So these are the things you have to think through. You need to think through why am I bringing up this set of attributes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why are those ones, right? What are those relevant to? Then, after you're done determining how you're going to populate this set of attributes, then you need to determine how these attributes are related to this one. How is having hair-like structures, etc., relevant to being a mammal? And now this is when we talk about necessary and sufficient conditions again. One way to show relevance is the similar way that we were showing genuine conditions. It might be the case that you're going to say this. Look, here's 6. 6 is being a mammal. And now 6 is in a necessary condition spot. 1 through 5, that might be in the sufficient condition spot. Perhaps it's the case that if you have this set of attributes, hair-like structures, etc., maybe if you have 1 through 5, then you have 6. Okay, maybe that's true. So then how you test that is you'd say, well, 1, 2, I don't have 6. Well, then is it the case that you don't have 1 through 5? And maybe it is. Maybe it is the case you don't have 1 through 5. Right? If you're not a mammal, then you don't have hair-like structures, you don't give live births, you don't nurse your young, you don't have a spinal cord, at least all of those things together. You might have some of them, but not all of them together. So that's one way to test there for relevance. If you want to test relevance individually, you can do that too. There's one way you can do it. You can say, well, if I'm a mammal, then do I have a spinal cord? Number 1, right? So that's number 1. So here's being a mammal is number 6. And here's the first attribute, spinal cord, we'll say. Yeah, if I'm a mammal, then I have a spinal cord. Okay, that's relevance. You said, well, if you don't have a spinal cord, then you're not a mammal. Now, other things being equal, that's probably true. There might, some oddities happen, some accidents happen. But generally speaking, more than generally speaking, if you don't have a spinal cord, you're not a mammal. You can do that the same thing over here with, say, these attributes. What is, if I have 6, then is it true that I have 3 and 4? Right? Is that true? So you can say, well, if I don't have 3 and 4, is it true that I don't have 6? And then you have to do the thinking or the investigation to look into that. What we're trying to do right now is talk about relevance. Because an analogical argument is saying that two things are alike. They're alike in some way. And they're alike in some way so much that I can make a prediction about how the other thing is. So in an analogical argument, you have something called a source and a target. The source here is the P, so whatever that happens to be, maybe it's a clock. And the target is the Q here in this case. Perhaps that's like the world or something. And you say the source has particular attributes. The source is the thing, say, that you know about, right? That you have the information about. You know that the source has attributes, say, 1 through 5. You also know that the source has attribute 6. The target, in addition, you know something about that. You know it has attributes 1 through 5. However, you don't know whether or not it has 6. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use attributes 1 through 5 to make a prediction about having 6. So you'll say, because P has 1 through 5, and Q has 1 through 5, and P has 6, it's likely the case that Q will also have 6. That's just that's a prediction. So we're predicting. We're using this information right here, this source information, to make a prediction about what the target will have that we're not sure of. So you can say something along the lines of this, like the famous watchmaker argument, right? So say you're walking taking a hike, you come upon a watch in the wilderness and you open it up and it has this protective casing, and you look inside, it has this glass kind of bit going over it, and then in there you see these two hands that rotate, and you can notice that there's various gears and mechanisms that have different functions to kind of either make the hands move a particular way or protect it. And there's springs that are all delicately organized, and there's different things, and they're in this casing. They have like a chain. It seems like they serve some sort of function, and it seems like it's designed, right? It'd be odd to say the clock wasn't designed. So that's this, right? So you have 1 through 5, you're just having all these designy type of features. And then we know about the clock, right? The clock is, we know it clearly had a designer, it was designed. So then the argument goes that, well, look, the world, the target, also has these attributes, right? It has several protective layers. It seems to have various sort of functions. There's certain subs of informations. Et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of particular details. Everything's balanced on a really delicate edge. One type of constant changes quantities. It's erratic, life's impossible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Seems like there's all kinds of delicately designed business. Cells are crazy like cities, right? So the idea is then that because the clock, which has all these particular features like protective layers, coatings for something you'll be able to see it, appears to have some sort of function, telling time, preserving life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then we know it's designed. This thing has more of these types of features than this one does, but since this one has those features, and it also is designed, then it's reasonable to conclude that the world is designed, right? So that's kind of the general design argument shot through quickly, but so these are kind of these analogical arguments, right? You're saying there's some sort of source here that we know about, and we know about it, and we know the clock was designed. But because, and these attributes, these particular type of attributes, 1 through 5, are related to being designed. And so how are they relevant, right? The question goes, are these attributes relevant to being designed, or are they not? Because if they're not, then this inference doesn't work, right? Then having 1 through 5 is not related to being designed. That might be the case. But so the idea is then you have to present attributes that are relevant to something being designed. So that, how would you find relevance? Well, again, like we said a little bit ago, you talk about you do the modus tollens to check kind of the way we did for genuine conditions. So you'd say, well, if something, so we have a clock is like the world. Okay, so if the, say if the world, if the clock is designed, or something is designed, then it will have attributes, say, it's 1 through 2, right? Maybe that's true. If something is designed, then it maybe perhaps will have some sort of function, or it might display some sort of patterns of information, complicated information, right? So maybe that, and so you can say, well, if it doesn't have these things, 1 through 2, then doesn't mean it's not designed. Well, so if that might be the case. This might be an instance of showing where this is not required for that. Okay, well, it doesn't seem like that might not be required. So maybe what you can do is you can do the other way around. If something has 1 through 5, then is it the case that it has 6? So if it has, a function, a high level of, we call it fine tuning, and those types of things, then is that good enough to guarantee that it was designed? Well, maybe not either, right? But what you can do is you can start to look at other ways, right? If you can't find a logical kind of relation for relevance, what you might be able to do then is find some sort of frequency relation. Is it how frequently does, say, having these sorts of attributes occur with design, and how often does it occur without design? And so that's a matter of, say, counting. but so that's going to give you a frequency distribution or probability. These are different ways you can look for relevance. Now, if you did the design argument, you certainly probably could find some necessary and sufficient conditions that worked well together. And that would be one way you can do that. And you can do this with any argument. But finding relevance between having attributes 1 through 5 and 6 is really important. That's going to be the name of the game. How is this related to this? Right? How are these related to each other? What does this have to do with this, and what does this have to do with this? That's going to be very important. So the analogy then goes like this. A is like B. A has 1 through 3, and so is B. A has attribute 4 because A and B share 1 through 3, and A has 4. Okay, it's likely case that B has 4 too. And a way to argue for that again is to argue that something about having 1 through 3 is relevant to having that other attribute 4, whatever it happens to be. Maybe it has something to do with safety, right? If things have 1 through 3, then they're safe, or something like that, right? So then okay, well, you want to claim that A and B are like each other in terms of being safe. A has these attributes 1 through 3, and it also is safe. Seems like having 1 through 3 is relevant to being safe. For what reasons? You tell us. And then you'd say, since A and B both have these attributes, and A also is safe, it's likely that B is safe, because having 1 through 3 is relevant to having 4. And that's the main point. What's the connection between having these attributes? Okay, well, I think that's enough for analogies for now. I think we have some other videos on them that I'll post. Anyway, if you have any questions, again, reach out. Thanks.